Okay. So welcome to all of you. Welcome, Pia. I know that you have been in Iceland for a research conference and just came back recently with many other people from the science education research community in Denmark. It's a real pleasure to have you present here, and I know that one of the themes actually at the NF Sun conference that you and other people were attending was STEAM. So maybe there is a spillover from what you did last week in Iceland to the discussions that we will have here today. But Pia, please tell us a
Thank
little
you.
bit about yourself, and then
Yeah,
also about
I
the.
will. Yeah, I have a
Thank
point
you.
about myself along the presentation because that's a
Great.
point of the presentation. I'll start in a minute, but just thank you very much for this opportunity for me to present and research that I started a few years ago, but is now ongoing. And it's been a great deadline for me to finally to get something put down on what I'm actually doing because it relates backwards to things I've been doing previously. So hopefully I'll be sharing my presentation with you now. And yes, it seems like that one. Yeah, okay. So, oops, yeah. The distributed abstract that you likely already have read gives an agenda for what I'm going to be talking about. And it relates to research that I have previously been doing, my PhD, but also refers to ongoing research within the NAFA community. So I will start with saying something about the context. Then I will give some stepping stones on what I am standing on at the moment, what is part of my background in theory and conceptualization of what I'm doing. And then a bit about the ongoing research. And so it will be a quick run through these agendas. First, a bit about context. For non-Danish attendees, it will be important to know that we are in Denmark. That's pretty obvious. Connie already stated that, but it's significant to know that teacher education in Denmark is located at university colleges and not at universities. It has some influence on my research, has also influence on my participants and their work. Another issue is that I started doing this research a year ago, more or less, and in 2023, a new teacher education was put into power in Denmark. So I'm more or less simultaneous with that one. It's now trying to understand science teacher educators. And then a significant point, my pivotal point, myself, and it is an essential part of doing the type of research I'm doing. That is to really understand what are your own position, because that provides insights. It also provides blind spots. It's especially been stipulated by Stephanie Pinniger from University in Utah, US, who has said always flag yourself as whenever you're talking and relating to life history research and narratives as well. Well, I'm male, I'm senior, had a fairly straight middle class upbringing. Of significance to know is that my teacher educator narrative started back in 1996, where I started educating biology teachers, native technology teachers, and also been teaching some educational subjects along my career, which, as you can figure out, spans more than 25 years, nearly a generation. I've also been performing some mid-level management positions at teacher education. My research narrative starts in 2008 when I started on my PhD study. It related to life history of biology teachers. I've also been doing a lot of educational development, and also at the moment, as Connie also said in the introduction, holds a position as a mid-level management within science education and mathematics education at Yale University College. It positions me, that's the point from where I am looking at teacher educators, science teacher educators in Denmark. As I said, I will present some stepping stones, which is the literature overview that I will be presenting today. I will dwell on three um, on free items, 2 books, and a research community. And the first book is a review study made by Dutch researchers, and they focused on 3 things in their review. They looked at teacher educators, their professional role, their professional behavior, and also some critical features related to these focuses. They elude 6 roles during their review, and they also identify some critical features for each of these. The 6 roles are teachers of teachers, which of course is fairly straightforward as being a teacher educator, that's what you do, but also being a researcher is one of the significant elements, especially from other countries, but also there's a specific note on that in Denmark. And then there are 4 others. The last 4 I will not be dealing with today due to time limitation, but that's also significant aspects of being a teacher educator. Some of them are relevant and recognized in the Danish context. If it's the one about coach, the one about curriculum developer, but I'm not going to stop at them today. I will, my first up will be teacher of teachers. And they, the authors put up these 2 lines of critical features, the roles and the professional development. And of course, it relates to second order teaching, which more or less lies in the verbalization of the teachers of teachers. That's what you do. You're trying to teach somebody to teach others. And it's also been a study I've been doing in relation to NAFA together with colleagues. I know that Jens Jakob is here. And one of the also a significant role is also promotion of active learning. Of course, it relates to a constructivistic perception of what is learning. You have to do it. The teacher student have to be active in the learning. They have to do teaching. But also the teacher educator is performing teaching. And a very significant element there is modeling, that what the teacher educator is doing is more or less preaching, is also what the teacher students observe as being good teaching, or anyway a teaching practice. And the more explicit the teacher educator is trying to elaborate on what choices of approaches at subjects, the more the teacher students can learn from it. Another aspect is tensions and dilemmas, which relates to professional judgments of what to include, what not to include in your performance. At the professional development, there's the issue of context, frame and standards, and frame of standards and knowledge. What do you bring in? What do you focus on? It's building on personal qualities, the eagerness, the interest in doing something, and a lot of it also relates to support. A lot of your professional development come from support from peers and mentors, especially for newcomers. The teacher education is mentor specific. Research, self-study is a frequent approach that is frequently addressed and then on to the researcher role, which, as I already said, is not compulsory in Denmark as it is in many other countries, because if a teacher education is located at university, of course you have to perform research. But it is a significant role in Denmark as well, because a lot of us are doing research and a lot of us are doing development, school development and curriculum development. There are different roles here. Why is research important? There's one view of it. Some practical elaboration also set frames for the role as a researcher. How much time do I have for it? How much do I prioritize it myself? And of course, what do I focus on? Am I interested in the teaching subject? Am I interested in the educative aspects of it? Or am interested in my own practice? That defines 3 different focus that can be developed. Then onto professional development. As a researcher, the work environment is very important. Obviously, is there other researchers there? Is it a support structure? And what are the institutional expectations? Is it expected that I publish? Is expected I participate in conferences, stuff like that. And then, of course, there's factors within the researcher as a person. What are their motives? What are my passion? What kind of interest, research interest, do I take out that I find specifically interesting? And of course, incentives to start, but also keep on going. Is there rewards in it? Is there some kind of benefit? It could be a pay increase. It could be um, an opportunity to travel and meet colleagues from other countries and stuff like that. So this is just two of the roads that they have identified. And now on to the next, which is a publication that arises from the Association for Teacher Education in Europe. And one of the researchers, Anja Swennen, is one of the authors here. Anja Swennen is also a Dutch, so Dutch research stands very strong within teacher education. It's an anthology for research-informed methods for improving practice. And in the introduction, there's a lot about the voice of teacher educators, very significant approach trying to give voice to teacher educators. You could say they are academics, they should have voice, but are their voice heard, and what kind of voice is legitimate for them exploring. And finally, the final quote I have, researchers as bricoleurs, meaning they work as some kind of handyman, just working with the available materials and trying to produce some kind of research out of that. That could be one aspect of the way of trying to understand how is a teacher educator performing as a researcher. And then the notion of brave research, which they try to advertise for, which describes new ways, insider perspectives, dealing with diversity, dealing with unknown spaces and stuff like that, which is an agenda they try to raise and try to ask other researchers to join them in an endeavor for making more brave research. And the general idea is to change the world to the better. What research likely will try to claim that they do that, but do they really do it? I'll only pick two of the 13 contributions that are present in the anthology. I take two rather different ones. One is by Holdsworth. And if we go a bit close to reading what he says, the first thing he addresses, one of the things that I quote him here for addressing, is that there are two types of teacher educators, which is fairly important. There are the university-based or university college-based teacher educators, and there are the school-based teacher educators. They're two rather different ways of being a teacher educator. In Denmark, we also call them the school-based for practicum teachers. And then he take out the sharp pen. He says teacher educators base their teaching decision on common sense more than on public theory and struggle with modeling. And he continues, there's a strong connection between interviewees' personal beliefs and values, beliefs about education, core personal values, values related to the sense of personal identity. And he even stressed it even more. We must note that teacher educators' outdated and conservative assumptions about knowledge, skills, attitudes may not match new understanding of teaching and learning requiring them to be challenged and informed by new research. So he's pointing rather aggressively to that he's not impressed with the type of teacher education that he has been studying. He's from the UK. MacPhail is more gentle, more appeasing, addressing the personal perspective. Again, they're addressing the notion of voice and also addressing that career biographies are linked with the teacher educators' other life practices. So two rather different positions regarding what is a teacher educator and how can we learn from them. Now on to my third stepping stone, which comes from the Association of Teacher Education in Europe. This association has different research and development communities. One of them is looking at the moment at empowering teacher education. The departure point is given by this rather long text. The first point is a lot of words, but more or less it relates back to a sensation of a notion that was known, especially in the start of educational research in the 21st century, a lot about restructuring and what the burden it puts on teacher educators and education in general. And then they come to the more, what will they then do? They will, through their research, they want to contribute to a shared understanding of current dynamics within practices and different contexts of teacher education in Europe, and the lived experiences of teacher educators. And this was one thing that really related to what I've been doing previously. I will return to it later. They are performing two investigations. One is a questionnaire, which has been handed out to about 100 teacher educators all over Europe. It was distributed through the network and on a ATEE conference in Budapest in August 2023. And they're looking into this: to what degree do teachers experience meaning in their work? They had put in a new concept. It's not new, but it's new in understanding of teacher educators. And what kind of autonomy, relatedness, belongings, blah, 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 do they feel? Do they experience? When is it? How can they? We talk about the experience of meaning for teacher educators. And that is an issue they take even further. I should say this questionnaire investigation is primarily run by the two leaders of the RDC, Manuela Schlick from Austria and Ronny Schmidt from Belgium. And this is, we're looking into focus groups interviews, and now I can say we, because actually I participate in this line of research. It looks a level below meaning, looks in value. What kind of values is it actually that is the core of teacher educators? Can we somehow elude them? Can we try and talk about? And they refer very much to the work of Viktor Frankl, which Christoph Schlick has been elaborating on and developing into a more refined way. I cannot go into detail to that. That would take way much too time, but I can just show a brief overview. The Austrian origin of the Peer scale but it refers to that he splits up in three groups of values: attitudinal values, experiential values, and creative values. And you can see some of the elaborations here, and also the German, original Austrian headlines of them, which says more or less that this is important because we have to dig deeper. And actually they have developed, Christoph Schlick and Manuela Schlick, they had developed an operational analytical tool, and they also used it in a paper where they studied English language teachers in Austria. So, and this really resonated very well to what I have been puzzling about for quite a while, because I went back to my own research, and which relates to what I've been doing previously. My PhD, as I mentioned at the beginning, related to life history of science teachers in primary school and lower secondary school in Denmark. So some of the things I take up here is more or less a recollection of what I've been doing previously. Because if we really want to understand closely the people acting within any kind of context, and my especially interest is science teacher education, you have to look very closely on who are they actually, they are actually the ones who maneuver in there. And way to understand it could be life history research. I'm a good has been studying especially teachers in the UK for several decades, and he has this wonderful quote here: in understanding something so intensely personal as teaching, it is critical that you know about the person the teacher is. He even put it in italics in his original writing. You have to get a very near understanding of who is the person actually standing in the classroom. And I started wondering, is that also valid for teacher educators? And Jerome Bruner has also been addressing these aspects of history. It also relates to, they're very, very much contextualized. But whenever you start to talk to people, you get narratives out of them. So narratives are the media for life histories. So we also have to understand what is a narrative inquiry. And here I relate to Mine Horsdal, who is a Danish researcher, who especially relates to this very emotional richness of life histories, but also that is not as much the person as it is the sense making. And here that sense making relates back to the work of Christoph Schlick, who runs a Sinzentrum, meaning center, in Salzburg, where he works very intensely with local therapy, which is what Viktor Frankl developed. And Clandine and Connelly are widely known for some of the seminal researchers within narrative inquiry. They stipulated it looks at a phenomena. it's the phenomena of teaching that can be brought forward, which relates to this. But it also means that relation is very significant. And that brought me to Karen Barrett and pure post-humanistic research, the idea of the entangled ontology, meaning that things are related to one another. It's not it's not the teaching and the teacher educator that are two isolated and well-defined units. They are entangled into one another. It's the relation itself that is the relevant to try to understand what is actually going on. And the best image, I am a biologist, I could point for that, is the tendrils of pea plants. So that's the reason why they are in the background of this presentation. And here they are put in the foreground, because actually it is a very, for me, illustrative way to understand how do these many different aspects of teacher educators, teacher students relate to one another. And then, of course, I said this about primary use. Of course, if you make life history, some researchers only use narratives and interviews. But I read Anna Troiano's work on science teacher educators in primary school in the UK, and she raised this awareness that one thing is what the person tells you, but if you really want to understand it, you have to see how they perform. You have to be out there in the classroom. So I added research to my original research, and I'm also applying it now as I look into science teacher educators. And that is very important for me to really get close to this, to understand this. And other researchers within science teaching also been invested in that. Here I've just put Wang and Roth. So to my research this time is running, so I should move forward. My research design is more or less a copycat of what I did 10 years ago with science teachers. I make a life history, career narrative interview. I had added some art-based elements of go-karts and sorting of them and drawing options so that I get other visualization and other stimulations for talking about what is actually science teaching, how did you end up there. Then I do two more or less whole day observations of each participant. I'm nearly done with that. I've been spending 25 days in classrooms of my colleagues around in Denmark. And then I've been filling the gaps. I will be filling the gaps by a follow-up interview. When I've analyzed the observations and the life history interviews, I will develop specific interview guides for each participant. And of course, this is part of the research that is a bit scaring because, as I said previously, I've been in the business for 25 years. So the people I'm around interviewing and observing are my colleagues. We've been in the same profession for a generation, more or less, some of them. And so it's a bit scary getting so close and trying to be an outsider, but again, being also very close to them. So I have to perform a lot of rather refined and delicate ethical considerations because I should not put them in harm's way just because I want to make clever research. And that's one issue that really is very significant when you're doing this kind of research. So, closing, nearly. Just an overview, like you can't read this. This is very small. This is just to give an overview of the 13 participants I have in my research at the moment. And as you can see, they're spread out over age, and they spread out over educative background. And also, of course, they spread out over, I deliberately tried, I had two participants from each of the 6 university colleges in Denmark. So for one of them, I have 3, for those who can do math quickly. And I also have spread them out so that they represent different teaching subjects. We have 4 science subjects in Denmark, and I have secured that I have representatives for all 4 subjects. It's very much a convenience sample because I had to ask out in the community and going through managers, and so I went out through the management of each university college, making sure that I had their awareness of that I was present in their institution doing research. And I also had to more or less contact somebody more or less directly, because it was not easy to get 13 participants. I have a weak gender imbalance, but that was how it ended. I'm sorry for that, but that was what I was able to do, because I also had to get my project off the ground. And what to do? I will be working on life histories. Significant events is one of the key issues that you look for when you look at life histories narratives. Here I refer back to the work of Ivor Goodson and Pat Sykes, but also more recent work by Anja Svennen and Peter Daugbjerg, who's been performing life history research within teacher educators more generally. Again, this is based in UK and the Netherlands. I will also be looking at career narratives, trying to draw some of the career trajectories. And there's a more recent work by Guberman et al., who's been looking at career trajectories and career narratives from teacher educators from 4 different European countries. And then onto the, for me, new stuff. I've been doing work on meaning as part of my, or some follow-up of my PhD thesis. And here I will be using Jørgen Bruner and also Viktor Frankl. And of course, diving into this values issue, I will be working together with a group from the RDC-RTE. So this is not performed work yet. That's where we're going. My collaborators, I said I'm performing the research alone, but I do actually have somebody I do relate to. I relate to the NAFA Science Academy. There's a teacher education effort there, and that's one of the points that I do relate to. And also we have within via University College, we do have a profession research group, and I also is in contact with them. And then of course I relate to the empowering teacher education RDC unit there. But I'm open for more collaborators, and I have discovered a field that nobody ever has looked at. That's school-based teacher educators. So if anybody wants a good project on virgin ground, I could recommend somebody looking into that. So yeah, that was the words from me. So thank you for attending. Yeah. Cool.
Great. Thank you very much, Peer. And thank you for a fascinating introduction for those of us who are not so familiar with the life history approach, and also for a presentation of the ongoing research in this field and some of the main literatures in it. So that's really interesting. I would like to ask you, before we go into breakout rooms, why do you find this so important? Why is it important to look at life histories and personal stories when you are exploring teacher education?
It relates to a study that I did after my PhD. There was a rather large intervention task. Quest. The project was called Quest. Some of you are familiar with what that is. And this Quest project was doing a lot of systematic and systemic investigation into teachers. And I was sitting there with my life experience and asking some of the people doing that project, why don't you go closer to some of the teachers? And then I was brought in more or less. I did a parallel project on 5 or 6, I don't recall. And we then started, okay, let's analyze my life history research together with these more systemic approaches. And then we made a paper called What's in it for me? Because we looked at what is actually the intentions for teachers at school to participate in a professional development program. So that was, and I've been asking myself the same question now that NAFA started. Why should me and my colleagues bother to participate? What's the idea of that? And there's been done a lot of surveys, and they have also published on this. But what are actually the motivation for the individual teacher educators to look at? So to get closer again, to get more detailed insight, because it relates back to how do you motivate different kinds of people. As we are different, we have to be motivated in different ways. So that was my starting
And,
point, my incentive to get going. Because I said somebody should look at this, and then somebody was me.
and so this question of what motivates people to participate in development programs, what would you highlight? Is there something that you can highlight from the
Mm.
research?
Well, perhaps we should take care of not taking air out of the breakout room. But what we can see is that it really depends a lot of who you are. If you are very ambitious, if you want to leave the profession you are in, then you would love to participate in professional development, because then you can educate yourself out of your current profession. Some
So they
people,
so they participate to leave. Is that what you're saying?
yes, in the paper I referred to, we have two rather distinct cases of that. We also have a very distinct case of a person who very exactly says, I want to be better to make my teenager learn physics. That's the why I am in. So to improve my own teaching. That's also an agenda to enter it. And yeah, so there are these different kind of motivations, and you do not see them in the more general questionnaire and focus group interviews that typically are performed. Whenever you do, you elude them when you get closer to people. Then you can see them, and all of a sudden there's a match to all this systemic data. You can see, okay, this group, we can find this group also in the systemic and surveys, systemic data. So yeah.
Okay,
So
so are those the two primary ones, to leave or to become better at your job basically? Are there any
Yeah,
other?
yes, but oh, yeah, that different. Look, you could also somebody want to leave the profession completely. Other wants to get a senior position of some kind of management, and then you want to be more skilled, or you want to have insight in what are the people that I'm managing. You become what some kind of subdivision head of a teaching group, for example. That could
Mm.
be one.
So career advancement in
Yeah,
some
yes,
way.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Within the institution, also out of the institution. So
Okay,
there are different patterns. Yeah.
right. Okay, well, thank you. And so welcome back from break. And it looks like we don't have the second presenter here, so I'm going to just take a little bit of time, but we will end before 3 o'clock. Then, obviously today, but I would like to just to bring our breakout room conversations back into this room, and then I have a little bit of an experiment that I would like to try to end off with together. And I'm thinking that this will take maybe 10-15 minutes in total. So that would be my suggestion, that since Roberto Capone hasn't turned up, we're going to have to do without him. And then we can spend a little bit more time on Pierre's presentation. Okay, so what we spoke about in the breakout room that I was in, some of the things that were highlighted from people's personal histories as a reason why they are here now in this situation, working with what they are. There was a combination of perspectives that were about pleasure or enjoyment, engagement in science and in science education, and in also in communicating nature, basically. So those were some of the motivations that the people in my group highlighted. And people in my group, feel free to also contribute with your perspectives, but that would be what I would highlight. And then there was also the voicing of wanting to improve what what people see as not being good enough at present. So a combination of a positive motivation in relation to the topic of science and science education, and also this assessment that there are some things that could be better based on personal experiences from science education. And and I think that resonates, I would say, with Pierre, with what you mentioned in your presentation. Are there any of the other breakout rooms that had stuff that resonates with those perspectives, or did something else come out in the breakout rooms? Please feel free to unmute yourself and say something if you have something to say.
Is this questions to me or to all
Can you
participants?
a little bit louder?
Is this questions to all of us or the
Yeah,
group
yeah,
organizer?
to everyone, to everyone.
Yes. Frankly, yes, I see myself in the presentation because I also have a history life.
I think for me, your sound is very low. Is it the case for everyone?
I can
Yes.
make it. Yes, now it's better or?
A little bit better.
Yes. Yes, I would say that my I have also a life history and I find myself in the presentations. But frankly, I am here because I also have projects. It's about my futures and also my past and how can I improve my life histories via education. I come from engineering educations, engineering, software engineering domain, but I'm interested in engineering and STEM educations, and specifically I'm interested in intercultural teaching, intercultural assessment as research or as inquiry, and how city like Cairo, for example, can be a city like Copenhagen or a city like Nuremberg or something like this. So it's about conflict between culture, poverty, and the relation between educations and politics, and how teachers, how educators can react, and how software engineer who come from industry can also support, can understand the problem, and can develop a city with more human rights. That's my life history. Yes.
You're muted, Connie. Sorry.
Sorry, thank you. No, thank you for sharing that. And I was just going to ask, when you mentioned Cairo, is that because you have a background from Egypt?
Yes, frankly, because 10 years ago was a dream in Cairo. All the people go to street to change the system, but it doesn't work. So we go back and now we fight again. But to tell you the truth, it was a very wonderful moment in our life 10 years ago. All the people from all classes, all backgrounds go to street and they need a solution, they need hope, they need good education. And it works for 1 or 2 years, but then it was destroyed because of the political power and because of this globalization or capitalism, or say it what it is. And my dream that how can young generation get job and improve their life, and from bottom to top, not from top to down. So ethnography is very important for me. So I spend most of my time doing ethnographic studies for cities, for streets, for people. I see this life history approach is interesting for me, but I don't know how to learn more about it. And the presentation was helpful to tell you the truth.
Great.
But
Thank you.
in my
Thank you for that. And maybe we can extend that and use that as a catapult or a platform for asking Peer a question. So Peer, you mentioned in your presentation this notion of brave research, and how there were some pointers actually towards how the researcher could engage in the kind of research that you were highlighting. Can you say something more about what this role of the researcher, as either as the bricoleur or the brave researcher, what is it that is involved in this kind of research from a personal perspective?
Well, you put yourself at risk as a researcher, and of course you have to be aware that you can fail, but you actually do it with a change agenda. You want to improve the world, a bit like Vasim is telling about his ideas.
It's about social change, and it's very risky.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very
I
risky.
agree totally with you. So it's very risky. It needs brave, and it needs courage.
Yeah.
But also it needs theory. It needs somebody who is also more expert to give some theory to bring this hope or this social change in action and in good way to improve
But is
global earth. So,
but how, what about, isn't this more about politics than it's about research? What you guys are talking about now?
it's I would say that in my context, okay, because I come from different culture, from Middle East as child, I would say the political nature of education is the problem in Cairo. I don't know about Denmark or about other cities, but I would say in Cairo was the problem is the political nature of educations. Okay, this domain was not discovered, was not researched. But I think in Europa it's different because you have a very good education system. You have researcher, you have also financial support. You have a lot of also good schooling system and so on.
Great. Okay.
So,
Let's see what Jens Jakob,
but I would say globally, I would say
Jens
also
Jakob,
because
Jens Jakob, you have said that you want to say something as well. Can you?
Er jeg på nu?
Yes.
Kan I høre mig? Det var godt. Ja, jeg tænker, altså også den diskussion, vi havde lidt i vores breakout
Can you do it in English,
room,
Jakob?
yeah, well, the discussion we had in our breakout room was a bit about this, you mentioned about the political agendas in the country. And I think we see that as well in Denmark, where we were talking about the differences between gymnasium teacher structure and education to be a teacher at high school, you would say, upper secondary, and the differences to how you actually are going to be a teacher educator. It's a very conservative political system, and well, if you wanted to be a teacher at upper secondary in Denmark, but there's a lot of different ways to go into teacher education, and I think mainly because of that, it's a quite interesting job you're starting here, Peer. We need some pictures of how people are actually going to be an expert in this field, and how the ways, how a lot of ways can be, you could say, showing different ways to go into teacher education, and the needs teacher educators are experiencing because of that. Well, you could say the university way, one of them. You could say the university college way, another of them. But in between, there's a lot of differences who's been raised the past years, and so we need a picture of these and these differences and the needs professionals are experiencing. And I think one of the ways is the narrative inquiry structure you mentioned here, Pierre. So we need stories, in my opinion.
Jens Jakob, did I understand you correctly that you said that there were more trajectories leading into teacher education at university colleges than in universities? Was that what you were saying? I mean, were you saying that?
No, I guess that there are these two main trajectories. But in the past 10 years, we see combinations in a way we hadn't seen before. And that gives different structures at university colleges. So I think these stories have to come to the foreground so we can, because what are we talking about here? We're talking about how to be a good teacher educator. And I guess if we're not going deep into these stories, we can't find these details, because there's not one solution here, I think.
So one of the things that I'm finding very interesting about the science education practice and research field is that there's both science and there's the humanities and the social sciences. So it's very much an or a transdisciplinary intersection, I would say. And I find that as being a part actually of these personal trajectories as well, that there are many ways into becoming a member of the practice and the research community. And there's also, I would say, a negotiation of different ways that you can be a legitimate participant in the community. And there's a continuous negotiation of what it is to be right in it as a community. I find that to be one of the interesting observations that I have done in my participant ethnography, I would say, of the past 3 years of being a new arrival into this community. I would like to ask Peer, do you have a final comment that you want to provide? I think that you have put something in the chat. I'll give you the last word, and then one little exercise that it's not actually an exercise, it's more like an activity that I would like to try with all of you, is that we do a shared story. So just stay tuned for that in a moment. But please, Per, do you want to say something?
Well, actually, the recruitment issue has also been part of my motivation for starting this, and also for starting my look into teachers, primary school and lower secondary school teachers, because, and it's right as Jens Jakob are saying, also as you are formulating, Connie, that there are many different ways to become a teacher educator at a university college. So we'll just leave it at that. And I have at least four different ways in my sample of the 13 persons. The thing I put in the chat was that you were asking what is brave research? How is that? I just put it out because I had a definition of it somewhere, and finally I got it out of the presentation and I got it into the chat. There are these nine you could say marks of it, identities of it, elements within it. Of course, you're right. You could easily end up become a politician whenever you start doing stuff like that. But if you want to be a researcher, you always have to have some kind of distance and try not to be involved too much in it. But it's very difficult if you do, as Sven and White are talking about in their book, you do brave research. You easily move into the policy field because you have an agenda. You have something that you want to change, and you want to bring other voices to the floor, and make sure that they actually are heard. And so that is, of course, part of the deal. So you have to have this very diverse approach to whatever you're investigating, and the ethnography is one of the approaches that do that very frequently. So I would say that, as you can see, it's also stated that it's an idea. It's not as much as a method. It's an idea. Of course, if you're a very strict researcher, you get a bit worried. Just an idea. How do you validate that? How do you make that reliable? We can put all these criteria on what's good research. But sometimes we have to go to the borders to see how do we push them. And I think some of the things that pushed my research previously away, that was when I made post-humanism, and the way to talk about relations, which completely changed my understanding of, okay, there's not the teacher and the subject. There's a relation between these two, and you cannot take them apart, and you cannot take the life history out of the teacher. So that's, the track has already, Jens Jakob has said something about it, and also so I think that's an important. But of course, you should not get lost in it. You could get lost in these cases. You can fall in love with your participants, and you can get lost into them, and then you're not able to be the researcher anymore. So it's always a delicate balance that you have to.
And if I can just supplement, I think that was a really interesting comment that you made here, and or remark, and the addressing of, involving Karen Barad and post-humanism. It's interesting there that she builds on physics, right? I mean, exactly. She builds on insights from quantum mechanics in order to make an argumentation for how the observer is always a part of what is being observed. And so when I asked whether this was whether this was not about politics, it was also actually a little bit for fun, because in my opinion, science is always political. I mean, it's, if you read studies of science and technology, one of the things that shows is that science isn't just something that emerges out of, of thin air. It's something that is fabricated, it's funded, it's financed. There's a lot of different kinds of effort that goes into making facts and making knowledge. So that perspective also applies. I think it applies to science and technology, but it also applies to the more human and social sciences, which I would say that education and pedagogy is a part of. So yeah, but okay. So thank you, Pia. Thank you very much. And thank you all for participating until now and in the breakout rooms. The thing that I would like to see if we can do is to do a story of a personal or a life history of a teacher educator in a group. So it's kind of like taking turns and doing a shared story together. And since we can't we don't know what the order of the people that are here, so I think we have to pass it on. So if I start, I can pass it on, and I'll pass it on to you, Pia, just so that you're warned. And then you pass it on to somebody else. So I will say a teacher educator walked around in the world, and then I'll say something more, and then I'll pass it on to Pia, and Pia, you then continue the narrative. So we do a shared narrative of this one teacher educator walking into the world and finding things and maybe having critical events or something that kind of resonates with the stuff that we have been experiencing today here. And I want to mention to the people who haven't been here from the beginning that Roberto Capone, who was supposed to do the presentation, the number 2 presentation, hasn't turned up. So that's the reason why we're a little bit off program here. But are you game for trying to do this shared narrative of a teacher educator? So then, good, great. So unmute yourselves so that you're ready to speak, and then when everybody has had their turn, we will end the session off with maybe with applause and laughter, or not. We'll see what happens in the story. Okay, so a teacher educator went to Iceland in order to look for inspiration. Pia.
And he found a lot of old friends and also some new friends. And he heard a lot about STEAM and STEM, which was the, what was that called? The label for the conference. But actually the most benefit he had from a dialogue with some Swedish colleagues on a more elaborate collaboration that was supposed to be held there. And then I send it on to Harald, and he can continue because.
Oh. Yeah, actually 2 Swedish colleagues, I think, trying to start a collaboration for years to come to inspire both Swedish and Danish teacher education, emphasizing that I think we need to look beyond our own borders to have new thoughts on how to perform teacher education. Yeah. And Sweden is perhaps not the most different country to look for inspiration, but internationalization is one way to be brave, perhaps. Yeah.
And
I'll pass it on to Anders.
But many years before that, he worried about the environment and pollution, and he chose to study biology. And I will pass it on to Morten.
Oh, thanks. By studying biology and looking at
You're
Morten, you
muted,
mute
Morten.
yourself.
You muted yourself.
Yeah, somehow you muted.
Oh, sorry. By looking at his fellow students, he wondered why many of them did not care for the environment, even though they studied biology, which led him to believe there must be something significant about him that made him care for the environment. And I'll pass this on to Tina.
And he found that he needs to be curious about his peers and how his peers and himself can engage in interesting collaborations in science education, and that curiosity and vulnerability is important for good collaborations. And I will pass it on to Dorte.
Yes. But as a teacher educator, which was his job, of course, he was also interested in the students, how to teach the students about environment and biology, which was his subject, of course. So he needed some teachers that he could collaborate with, figuring out how to discuss golden moments in classrooms and those kind of things. But the collaboration was difficult for him. And now I pass it on to Jens Jakob.
Yeah, but and then he thought about the way he actually got into teacher education in the first place. Is this interest in the environmental stuff at his study when he studied biology and seeking these collaborations forms led him into you could say didactical pedagogical interest, and how this study actually was done, and these questions led him into the teacher education career, and working as a teacher educator now. Jeg kan ikke se, hvad vi ellers har blackboardet. And I'll pass it to who, Dorte? Who can I pass it to?
Dorte Rue.
Dorte Rue. I'll pass it to Dorte Rue.
Maybe she's not here.
She's not
She's muted.
She's not catching it. So we will pass it on to David Bertoli.
David Bertoli.
Yes. So he asked himself if what is the reason behind he loves so much biology, and why sometimes he's unable to pass his passion and his love for the subject to his students, and this led him to thought about how much his work is complex and difficult, and have so many variables that have to be considered. And then I pass the word to Wasim. Sorry for the pronunciation.
No problem, it's good pronunciation. But now I'll play the role of one of those students. I tried to use some actor skills, and I would say that I am, as students come from different worldview or culture, but I share with you the same earth, the same biological body structure, and I have only some questions, and I don't know how to structure my questions to be a researcher like you, because to tell you the truth, I come from industry. In industry, the research domain is forced by top down and not from bottom up. So that's my settings, and I hope that this community can help me also improve my research and improve formulating my questions for the good health, good earth, and good social change together.
Great, thank you. And then we will pass it on to Eva. You get to
Eva, yes, I pass it to Eva.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not really sure what to say. I think, and this scholar decided that he would seek up more colleagues in the community of NAFA to be to be wiser what to do about all these major questions.
And then he joined a professional learning community that met online a couple of times in the semester, and everybody was happy. And thank you all. Okay, so the reason why I thought that this little weird exercise was appropriate is, of course, because narrative and personal events and personal standpoints are a part of the research approach that Peer was presenting. So I was just trying to respond to Peer's presentation in terms of the way that we could end this off. And thank you all for playing along. I thought it was interesting and fun, and I actually feel that I learned new things about each and every one of you. So thank you for that as well. And that will be the end of this session now. See you after summer. We will have a program again after summer for more of these kinds of nice seminars. So oh yeah.
Or maybe it is appropriate to see there is actually a nice workshop. When is it? It's the 13th or whenever. I can't.
24th, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. The 24th. Yeah.
22nd, I think.
Okay.
24th. It's.
I think the learning community has to negotiate.
You have to look in the calendar.
I just checked. 24th. That's right.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, and so where do people learn about that, Iwa?
Yes, that would be helpful for me because I don't know about this workshop.
It's on the website of SDU and has been posted in the NAFA newsletter last month.
Good.
But it's a real workshop. You have to go to Fune in Odense to attend.
Oh,
good. Yeah. Maybe we can provide it in the chat, a link for it. I'll see if I can find it in a moment. So if you want that link, then just stay here. And if not, let's just check out and see you around. See you maybe in next week, maybe next month, maybe after summer.
Sooner or later.
Okay? Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.